Ladies and gentlemen, we now arrive at a seminal moment. We are privileged to be able to listen to a special address by none other than the esteemed Finance Minister of India, Smt Nirmala Sitharaman. The Honorable Minister,
Good morning, and I'm very glad to be here. Let me begin by congratulating the Indian Navy and its knowledge partner, the National Maritime Foundation, for the perseverance and success with which these annual editions of the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue have been conducted since their inception in 2018. I recall that at the inaugural session of the IPRD in its first edition, I was privileged to have delivered the commemorative address as the Defense Minister of India. I am very pleased to be back 5 years down the line, this time as the Finance Minister, and to find the IPRD has indeed gained considerable traction and is fast establishing itself as the maritime version of the Raisina dialogue. India has a rich heritage of maritime trade and shipbuilding. Our country's 7,500 kilometers long coastline has been deeply intertwined in shaping cultural, economic, and social evolution over the millennia. The ancient Harappans were excellent seafarers, reaching as far as Mesopotamia and establishing ties with distant civilizations through the Persian Gulf. I'm not referring to the Cholas, who also did similarly towards the Southeast Asian countries. The discovery of active artifacts like the Persian Gulf seal in the ancient port town of Lothal and Indus seals in Mesopotamian cities are clear statement to our ancestors' maritime acumen and also serve as enduring proof of our maritime trade connections with regions like Mesopotamia. India's stature as a great maritime power is also borne out through ancient treatises and scriptures such as the Arthashastra, the Prayagraj pillar, the inscription on that pillar of Samudragupta, and observations of foreign travelers like the Chinese monks Fa Hian and Huan Sang. India's blue economy, which accounts for roughly 4% of India's GDP, represents a sea of opportunities. India has 9 states and 4 union territories situated on the coast, 12 major ports and 200 non-major ports situated along its coastline, and a vast network of navigable waterways for international and domestic trade. The industry in India provides over 2 lakh direct and indirect employment, which is only expected to grow. According to the UNCTAD, India was the second largest exporter of ocean-based goods and services among developing countries in 2020. The theme of this year's edition of the IPRD, which is Geopolitical Impacts upon Maritime Connectivity, is particularly a relevant one, given the geopolitical impacts that are being generated by ongoing geopolitical turmoil in several parts of the world. At this moment, I wish to thank Admiral Karambir Singh for having given me a wonderful book in the recent past, which actually is a book many of you all would have read, but expands into what these geopolitical turmoils are doing in terms of trade, in terms of economic dominance, and also how nations are trying to rule the waves. I'm referring to To Rule the Waves, the book, written by Bruce D. Jones. He clearly demarcates, and which is a relevant thesis, I would think, he clearly demarcates that economic dominance, changing climate conditions, and also military power and dominance in military power are the three features which today govern everything that is happening in the oceans. And countries are vying with each other and at the same time trying to navigate the narrow difference which exists between dominance and being at par with one another if there are comparable powers. So the examples taken are very significant, and I'm sure you'll have the opportunity to review the book. But what interested me was the way in which India's position and India's navigation skills, not so much on the waters themselves, but in the political strategic sphere, how economic dominance has not allowed us to forget there are relations and relationships. And this author clearly refers to the differences that exist, but yet when it comes to trade, you look the other way and get going with your economic relationship as well, taking the example of the United States of America's relationship with China and India's relationship with China as well, both being examples where the economic dominance, changing climate conditions, and your political and military power equations all rule in deciding how you would handle the matters. Thank you for giving me the book. And yet, amidst the gloom of supply chain disruptions, the economic turbulence generated by contemporary conflicts that impact the Indo-Pacific, irrespective of whether they are occurring in relatively distant Ukraine, which the Australian official has referred to, or in relatively proximate Israel or Yemen. And despite the palpable tensions prevalent in the South and East China Sea, the Indian economy stands out as a bright spot. In this, our 75th year of independence, India's economic growth is estimated to be just under 7%. This is highest among the major economies. Even according to the usually conservative estimates of the IMF, the Indian economy is set to emerge as the world's third largest economy by 2027, hopping over Japan and Germany as its GDP crosses the $5 trillion level. By 2047, India aspires to be a developed economy. I would like to reiterate that this is in spite of the massive global slowdown caused by COVID-19 and the conflicts to which I have just alluded. The Indian economy is therefore on the right track, and despite a time of changes, it is heading towards a bright future. A major requirement for this global growth is vibrancy, efficiency, and sustained growth in India's trade. Being blessed as we are with one of the largest peninsulas, second only to the Arabian Peninsula, which is shared by 9 countries, unlike our peninsula, all of which are India's own. We are, in all intents and purposes, an island nation in that sense, with 95% of external merchandise and the trade of external merchandise by volume and 67% of value flowing over the seas. Maritime connectivity in general and maritime trade connectivity in particular will therefore have to become areas of our most unwavering and sharpest focus. It is in this context that this ongoing conference has such great relevance to our national and regional policy making. On the one hand, as much as 65% of the world's population dwells in the nation states of the Indo-Pacific, and this is undoubtedly the world's most economically dynamic region. It accounts for a staggering $47.93 trillion worth of economic activity annually. In fact, it encompasses 60% of global GDP and almost 50% of the global merchandise trade. On the other hand, the Indo-Pacific is also a geopolitically contested space that is being roiled by great power competition. Successive editions of the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue continue to sensitize us to the fact that two broad systems are currently engaged in a global competition centered upon the Indo-Pacific. One draws its legitimacy from an internationally accepted and consensually derived rules-based order. India stands firmly and proudly in the vanguard of this system. The other seeks to discredit and disrupt this consensually derived rules-based order and supplant it with an international order whose rules are generated in an exclusive state. Amidst these compelling state systems, middle powers are exploring a variety of options of engagement that would provide them with the assurance of peaceful pursuit of geopolitical goals that are in keeping with their individual national interests as well as their border and regional concerns. Towards this end, I am pleased to find that various chambers of commerce and industry are also taking initiatives to build synergies across the Indo-Pacific as a whole. The recent initiative of 8 chambers of Indo-Pacific countries that have agreed to work together under a common platform, the Association of Indo-Pacific Chambers of Commerce, aimed at boosting trade and commerce across the region, is worthy of mention, as such cooperative and collaborative mechanisms within the private sector of the region's economies hold out a great deal of promise. As India accelerates its economic growth and uplifts its teeming masses, moving them from poverty to prosperity, it is registering impressive gains in its comprehensive national power as well as in terms of its international stature. Today, Indians, whether at home or abroad, stand, walk, talk, and act with their heads held high. However, even as the world appreciates India's achievements and successes and lauds it for demonstrated resilience amidst multiple crises, we are very clear that we cannot afford to be an inward-leaning power. Our focus on transitioning from brown economic model to a blue economic one, and thereafter extrapolating this blue transition across the length and breadth of the Indo-Pacific demands that we should shoulder greater and heavier regional responsibilities, and this is precisely what we are doing. Today, India's rising global profile rests upon several accomplishments. Unique and world-class digital public infrastructure is one of them. I can quote the examples of Aadhaar, CoWIN, and the UPI. The COVID vaccination drive that we undertook on an unparalleled scale across the Indo-Pacific, and that too with remarkable speed. Our proactive role in support of planetary security, such as achieving climate-related goals, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, Mission Life, and the National Hydrogen Mission. Our successful G20 presidency has become a global standard for others to emulate. It gave us a unique opportunity to strengthen India's role in the world economic order, and I'm proud to affirm that we seized the opportunity with both hands. True to our central tenet of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is a Sanskrit phrase meaning the world is one family. We steered an ambitious, people-centric agenda to address global challenges and to facilitate sustainable economic development. We are determined to adhere to our principle of leaving no one behind, whether at a national level or regional one. This is why India's maritime policy is perfectly encapsulated in the acronym SAGAR, which expands to security and growth for all in the region. We truly believe that it is not possible for the Indian economy to ride on some crest while the economies of other countries of our maritime neighborhood are wallowing in some tough trough. If we are to grow in an environment of peace, security, and stability, the growth and security of others in our region must be a given. As far as India is concerned, we are straining our every sinew to ensure that we set an example that is worthy of emulation. Consequently, we have significantly improved our position as a well-governed and innovative country with a conducive and conducive environment for business and reflected in several global indices. We have made significant progress in our sustainable development goals. We have assigned a special name to the time period between present and 2047. We will celebrate the centenary of our independence. This is being called Amritkal. It is drawn from a Vedic period, denotes an epoch of time in which goodness prevails to benefit of all forms of creation. Amritkal is considered to be the most auspicious time to start any new work. Maritime connectivity in general and trade-centric maritime connectivity in particular is crucial to our ongoing efforts to ensure that the promise of Amritkal is fully realized. Towards this end, I would also like to echo the words of our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, who has stated quite unequivocally, and I quote, "Connectivity is vital. It does more than enhance trade and prosperity. It unites a region. India has been at a crossroads for centuries. We understand the benefits of connectivity. There are many connectivity initiatives in the region. One of the most promising connectivity projects that we have embarked upon is the IMEC Corridor, that is, the India, Middle East, Europe Connectivity Corridor. This was signed on the 18th G20 summit held in New Delhi on 9th and 10th September 2023 and marked the culmination of India's G20 presidency. It is a multimodal economic corridor that incorporates multiple networks of shipping, railways, and roadways, and will also include electricity cables, high-speed data cables, and a hydrogen pipeline. The IMEC begins with what we might call the Eastern Corridor, which is predominantly maritime in nature. This will connect Indian ports such as the Jawaharlal Nehru Port Authority, Mundra, Kandla, which is in Gujarat, with West Asian ones such as Fujairah, Jebel Ali, and Abu Dhabi in the UAE, and Saudi Arabian ports of Dammam, Ras Al Khair, and Guwaifat. Then there is a rail segment that will continue the IMEC and provide connection to the Saudi Arabian cities of Haradi and Al Haditha, onward to port of Haifa in Israel. The final segment, which some call the Northern Corridor, will once again be a maritime segment, connecting the port of Haifa to the Greek port of Piraeus and from there on to Europe. Thus, the IMEC will create a reliable and cost-effective cross-border ship to rail transit network to supplement existing maritime and road transport, and facilitate trade and connectivity, leading to the economic integration of South Asia, West Asia, and Europe and the Middle East. You would, and I'm very certain, agree that IMEC will be a win-win situation for all states involved as it enhances transportation efficiency, reduces logistic costs, increases economic unity, generates employment, and lowers greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to a cleaner, safer, better world. However, it is not without its geopolitical challenges, and the ongoing conflict in Israel and Gaza is worrying manifestation of these. Finally, let me reiterate that India is entirely conscious of the fact that over the foreseeable future, India's comprehensive national power is going to remain inextricably linked to the ocean. We are seized of the pressing need to grow the maritime sector as a whole, and our government is determined to provide the requisite support by way of fiscal policy and financial outlay. We seek to position India as a hub in new and diversified supply chains and value chains across the Indo-Pacific and indeed across the world. Towards this end, I'm happy to inform you that all sectors of the government are responding exceedingly positively to our new financial policies. This is equally true in the case of multiple facets of the maritime sector as a whole, from fisheries to maritime mineral exploration, from ports and shipping, including shipbuilding and ship repair and ship recycling, to maritime tourism, and from conventional energy to harvesting of ocean renewable energy resources. The results are uniformly encouraging. Let me close by drawing attention to just one aspect of the maritime sector, shipping, and highlight just a few of the results that are emerging from the fiscal policy support measures that are being provided. In terms of international shipments, our global ranking has risen from 44th place in 2014 to 22nd rank in 2023. Similarly, as per World Bank's Logistics Performance Index Report 2023, the turnaround time of the Indian ports is now just 0.9 days, 0.9 days, which is lower than ports in established maritime centers such as Singapore, UAE, Germany, and the USA, Australia, Russia, and South Africa. Our experience of the maritime manifestations of COVID-19 pandemic has led to shipping insurance too becoming a particular area of policy focus. On the one hand, a marine cargo pool has now been created with the full support of IRDAI, that is the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, and domestic insurance companies to support maritime trade. On the other, India is improving its strength in shipping arbitration, and in order to reduce India's vulnerability to international sanctions and pressures and to provide greater strategic flexibility in shipping operations, we are setting up a full-fledged Indian-owned and India-based protection and indemnity, P&I, popularly known as P&I, entity that will additionally provide protection to coastal and inland shipping. This opening session of the IPRD 2023 quite aptly focuses our collective attention on ports as the nodes of international trade, as well in terms of port-led development, which is the need of the hour for many of the coastal and island states of the Indo-Pacific. India is no exception, and our fiscal policy both recognizes and fully supports this. As many as 31 projects have been identified in 9 major ports for monetization under the National Monetization Pipeline, launched in 2022, with a total estimated capex of 14,483 crore Indian rupees, which is about 1.74 billion US dollars for the year 2022 to 2025. To conclude, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, clearly Maritime India is on the move. On the buoyant note, let me draw my address to a close and thank the Indian Navy and the National Maritime Foundation for their excellent work and for providing me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with all of you. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.